hugging each other. All that is good. It's good to see you. It is good to be seen. Welcome to the Boise Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. I'm the Reverend Sara LaWall. It is my great honor to serve this beloved community. And I'm joined today by Patricia Heeb as our celebrant. And we have some beautiful music this morning with our music director, Carrie Bastian, and violist, Marcie von Huene. Thank you for joining us this morning. We are a community gathered to nurture spiritual growth, real connection, and faithful action for a better world. We welcome you. Whoever you are, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, whomever you love, however you identify, your presence is a blessing. We want to welcome those who are joining us virtually from the comfort of their homes, or maybe you're out on a walk, and I'll invite us to turn and wave to the cameras. Thank you for tuning in with us this morning and reminding all of us that we worship as one community beyond the walls, connected to one another. And we know it takes a lot of courage to step inside the threshold of a new community. So those of you who are newcomers, visitors visiting us for the first time, or maybe it's your second or third time, a special welcome to you. Thank you for choosing us this morning. We invite you to introduce yourself in the chat and to each other after the service today so that we can warmly welcome you and get to know you a little better. We invite you to fill out a newcomer form. We'll post a link in the chat, and cards are on the tables in the entryways so that we can keep you connected with all that is happening in our fellowship. And my goodness, is a lot happening this time of year. This is an exciting time of year. This is the time of year when we are kicking off our season of giving with our auction and all kinds of things. So I have a lot of announcements to share with you. For our newcomers, we are continuing our Inquirer series, this series for newcomers that introduces you to Unitarian Universalism and to this community. And folks will gather in the end of the North Wing there today after services, and we also have a hybrid option for those joining us online. And you know that our auction is coming because we keep telling you, but I'm going to keep telling you the auction is coming to get you all excited about it. So you can check in the hospitality room to learn more about the auction. It's virtual. It will be online for a whole week where you can place your bids and get into all those bidding wars. And today we have some really beautiful items that we want to highlight for you that will be available for auction. The first is like your instant library. And this is donated by the Women's Verge Group of 96 with help and stewardship from Sharice Davis. That's just a sampling of what that auction item has to offer, and you'll see more of it in this entryway here. It is books upon books upon books upon books upon books, with swag from Rediscovered Books and gift cards, and it gets you and 11 of your buddies a private shopping experience, or a shopping experience, guided shopping experience at Rediscovered Books. I mean, who doesn't want to just add to your own library or have a year's worth of gifts to give away? And then next to that, we want to highlight this beautiful basket of honey from beekeeper Dick Knapp, our own Dick Knapp and Sarah Cox. There are 4 different varietals of homemade honey that will also be up for auction. So go and chat with our auction folks and get yourselves ready to get online, and then we'll celebrate together with a big party on March 4th. Oh, and part of the auction every year, as you know, our quilters make a beautiful handmade quilt. You can see that quilt in the hospitality room. It's finished and on display. I've been watching them put the final touches on it here over the weekends. It's beautiful. And that quilt is a raffle, so you can purchase your raffle tickets, and then you might be the winner of a quilt. How many of you among us have won a beautiful auction quilt before? Anyone in this? Becky over there? Year to year, they are stunning. So if that's your thing, buy a lot of raffle tickets. We also have several reproductive justice events that we want to highlight for you and invite you into. The first is a photo exhibit called Focus on Abortion, that shares abortion stories. We are the sponsors of this exhibit, but we are partnering with the folks at Cathedral of the Rockies who will be our exhibitors of the exhibit, February 10th through February 20th, on display in their lobby. You can go in at any time and view it. Pay attention to your email because we'll have some opportunities for viewing options as a community together if you would like to join in community and have a meal together and go see that. You can also see the exhibit the same time as our panel discussion on Saturday, February 18th, 1 p.m., again at the Cathedral of the Rockies. We're hosting a panel discussion to talk about the impact of Idaho's abortion laws and where things are today. So we invite you to join us in those efforts where we are partnering in interfaith, cross-denominationally to bring these events to our community. Our fellowship donates 25% of its unpledged plate offering to support local organizations whose mission aligns with our social justice mission and ministries. And this month, we're really delighted that our plate partner for the first time is the Shoshone-Paiute tribes of the Duck Valley Indian Reservation. It's been a long time coming for this partnership, and here to tell us a little bit more about it and the story is Rick Groff.
Thank you, Reverend Sara. One February afternoon in 1978, Becky and I left the Health and Welfare Adoption Office with a beautiful baby boy. Matthew had gorgeous tan skin and shiny black hair. As a teen, he applied for tribal membership to the tribes of his biological parents and eventually received official notification of enrollment with the Duck Valley tribes. Along the way, Becky connected with a Native American who gave us the information we needed for Matthew to meet his biological mother. He spent time with Mary and traveled with her once to Duck Valley for a family gathering. Over time, Becky and I developed strong emotional ties with the tribes of Duck Valley. Boise Unitarian Fellowship began having a land acknowledgement during each Sunday service years ago, and it touches me each time. When George Floyd was murdered in May 2020, many of us at Booth struggled to cope with his death and our COVID-induced isolation. In response, Eileen Odag and Tom Neal started a weekly Zoom racial justice discussion group. I have learned a lot about racial justice as the group has continued over 2.5 years. But learning and talking about racial justice didn't feel like enough. The Duck Valley Reservation is a small reservation 130 miles due south of Boise, straddling the Idaho-Nevada border. I had little experience interacting with Native Americans. I think I knew about their suspicion of white people and knew there were substantial cultural differences on an intellectual level. In the fall of 2020, I was hoping to make a small gesture that would open doors for deeper and more interactive justice work with the tribes in the future. My planned activity was to bring a few families in need groceries and Christmas presents for their kids. Due to cultural differences, results of cold calls and bumps along the road, I ended up collecting a financial gift for their youngest children. I worked on and off with a contact from Duck Valley to generate another Christmas donation for the tribes in December 2021. In the process, I had a meeting with the Booth Social Justice Council and Reverend Sara, and it was suggested that I nominate the Duck Valley tribes to be a plate partner for the 2022-2023 year. That was an idea that had never occurred to me. I did nominate Duck Valley tribes to be our plate partner last spring, and am grateful they were chosen to be our February 2023 partner. My Duck Valley partner is Tribal Vice Chairman Arnold Thomas. He told me recently there are a range of projects our gift may be used for depending on the size of the collection and the situation when it is received. He also stated that whatever project is chosen, the gift will be used to enhance the welfare of the Duck Valley tribes. Thank you.
Rick, I want to thank you for your generosity and your wholehearted spirit and persistence in the way that you have continued to help keep us connected with the tribes and think about all the different ways that we might support them. So I'm really delighted that we're doing it as part of this Plate Partner program this year. And I know you've been a real gracious and generous partner to them as we continue to understand what right relationship with Indigenous peoples in our community looks like. And it is one way, this partnership, just one small way, that we live out those commitments that we express each week in our land acknowledgement, which I now realize I skipped right over. So Mike, if you're ready, why don't we have it right now?
We come from and live on land considered sacred by Indigenous people known as Bannock, Paiute, Shoshone, and many other tribes that lived here sustainably for thousands of years. We strive to understand and reframe our responsibilities to land, to community. In the spirit of respectful reciprocity, we honor the original caretakers of this place. We affirm the relationships we have to each other, including our relations to animals and insects that inhabit the water, land, and sky. We recognize the relationship, the responsibility to quiet creeks, rushing rivers, rustling grasses, to sprawling forests, to the brilliant palettes of the sky, to the roots that grip the soil, to the earth beneath our feet. Water is life. To all of us affected by the boarding school revelations, may we be granted compassionate understanding. May we find healing in the harm that lives in our history. We honor and support the right to sovereignty for our Indigenous neighbors. We acknowledge that a land acknowledgement is not enough. Now, let us breathe together. Let us take a moment to enjoy the delicious air, the oxygen provided by tree. Hold to the warm light of sun. Consider the solidity, the groundedness of earth. Flow with refreshing, life-giving water. Let the mud settle. Find clarity of mind and spirit. Welcome our ancestors. Enjoy this present moment together.
Perfect timing. Great moment for that. Thank you again, Rick. There are many ways that you can give to this Plate Partner and to the ministries of this fellowship. You can go online to our website and make a gift that way. You can do so through your smartphone app. Cash and checks are always welcome, and we have envelopes and drop boxes just inside the doors here. However you choose to give. And for all the ways that you have given in the past, particularly during those fundraising efforts for the Duck Valley tribes, we are grateful for your generosity and the way that you help us as a community live out our values in the world. Each month we take on a spiritual theme to explore for the month. And this month, February, it may seem a little cliche. However, it is still a theme worth pursuing. Our theme is the path of love. And today's service is asking, what's love got to do with it? And we thought about Tina Turner, but we're not doing that today. But if you're me, you've been humming the song all week long. Well, what's love got to do with Unitarian Universalism? Anyway, that's the question we're asking today. Over the past year and a half, a special study commission was appointed by our Unitarian Universalist Association board, and it's been reviewing Article 2 of our UUA bylaws. And this is the article in the bylaws that houses the principles and purposes, where they're codified. And their proposed revision after a series of conversations and feedback sessions and surveys was just submitted to the UUA board a couple of weeks ago. And this revision places love at the center of our purposes, our covenant with one another as congregations, and our values, claiming love as a shared spiritual discipline and the power that holds us together. Unitarian Universalists, we've long pointed to love as a guiding force, as a core theological claim. This revision just puts that claim into writing for all of us to share. I'm really excited about this work that we're doing as an association, and I'm excited to share the love at the center with you today. So as we enter into this time of worship, into this path of love together as a beloved community, I invite you to take a breath with me. Fill your body with breath. Allow yourself to come into this space and into your body to be fully present for what unfolds before you. Allow your breath to connect you to this community, to your spiritual center, to the world beyond our walls, and to our planet. Allow your breath to guide you as you listen deeply to your heart's own longing. Thou art the song of my heart in the morning. Thou art the dawn of truth in my soul. Thou art the dew of the roses adorning. Thou art the woven whole. Thine is the grace to be steadfast in danger. Thine is the peace that none can destroy. Thine is the face of the need-driven stranger. Thine are the wings of joy. Thou art the deep, to the deep in me calling. Thou art a lamp where my feet shall tread. Thy way is steep, past the peril of falling. Thou art my daily bread. Thine be the praise of my spirit uplifted. Thou art the sea to each flowing stream. Thine be the days that are gathered and sifted. Thou art the deathless dream.
Nothing like a violin to go straight to the heart. Each week we light our flaming chalice, a symbol of our free faith, a beacon of hope and love and justice. We join in lighting in solidarity with thousands of Unitarian congregations across the nation and the world, reminding us that we are part of a larger community as we light our chalice. Today we have a young chalice lighter with us, Austin LaSalle. Austin, hi, come on up. We invite yay, thank you. We invite a child to light the chalice, to recognize the children and youth in our community and our responsibility to them and for the future that we build together with our children. As Austin lights the chalice here in the sanctuary, I invite you at home, if you have a chalice nearby, light it now, and please enter in the chat where your chalice is lit. Thank you very much. Yay. Thank you so much. With our collective chalices lit in all of our spaces, I don't invite you. Missed my place here. We want to offer this call to worship from William Stafford. The way it is. There's a thread you follow. It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change. People wonder what you are pursuing. You have to explain about the thread. But it's hard for others to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen, people hurt or die. You suffer and get old. Nothing you can do to stop time's unfolding. You don't ever let go of the thread. Come, let us worship together. As we move into our time for all ages, I'd like to invite the children to come join us up in front, and as we watch Jim share today's story. Children, welcome, come forth. Yay, look at this. Sarah and I get the good view of the children.
Good morning, and join me in getting cozy for our Time for All Ages. This Sunday, we dive into this month of love with a big question. If we love the world, if we love other people, how do we make it a better place for everyone? Our story this morning is The Star Keeper by Faith Pray, and it is going to help us answer that question. Let's listen. The world had been dark for a long time. Rainy, lonely, dark. Every morning, the girl fed the fish and waited for things to be different. But every morning, the world stayed the same. On one especially wet day, the girl got tired of waiting. She made an enormous wish. She wished the lonely dark away. And what was this she's discovered in the pond? a star. It was beautiful and warm and perfect. She longed to keep it for herself, but the girl could tell the star didn't want to be kept hidden. It needed the girl to help it shine. Surely the best place for a star to light up the world, she thought, was someplace grand. But the people in the fancy house were busy. They didn't even want to stop and see the star. The girl and the star felt small. Next, the girl tried taking it to the shops. Shopkeepers are sensible, the girl figured. Maybe they would know what to do. But even as she knocked and knocked, the doors stayed shut. The girl and the star shivered. Finally, the girl took the star to the center of the village. Maybe someone there would be able to help, but no one seemed interested. The star was gloomy now, shrinkier, wilted. The girl felt it too. By now the star was as small as a smudge, and the world felt the same. I must not be very good at taking care of stars, thought the girl. Perhaps I should forget my wish. Someone else could try and help it shine. She found a perfect spot for giving up. Only someone was there already. 2 someones. Maybe there was something the girl could do. It was a very small thing. She shared her sweater and a tiny piece of the star. As she shared, the star seemed rounder, shinier, glowy. Maybe, thought the girl, there were lots of small somethings she could do with the star, instead of one great big one like she was trying to figure out. She shares her jacket with her new friends, and as she's going through the cemetery, she sees a very sad-looking woman. The girl and the star went everywhere. Each time she found something to do or someone to help, like this person grieving, the girl broke off a bit of the star. Here she's gathered flowers. Each time the star grew. She shared some with the baker, who shares some loaves of bread back, and she goes around and shares with other people. This person sitting on the park bench, who shares with the birds. She shares her loaves with the dogs of the town. The woman she helped earlier shares her umbrella. After all these acts, as she's going, she thinks, maybe she does know how to be a star keeper. Because it did shine. Not all at once, not in a grand way, but in tiny sparks that warmed and flamed and joined stars upon stars upon stars that chased away the lonely dark. Everyone has a piece of their own of the star. And as these stars grew brighter, the world was different. Much less gloomy, lots of sharing, music, lights. One small act of kindness leads to another, and another, and another.
In the spirit of finding our own courageous hearts, I invite our children, grades 5th grade and younger to join me for our religious exploration class, where we will explore our courageous hearts and also dance this gloomy, rainy Sunday away. Thank you all. Let's go.
May your mind be open to new learning. May your lips bring truth into the world. May your heart know love and your hands do the work of justice as you go your way in peace. As you go your way in peace.
You know, if any of you were to sneak out for that dance party, no judgment. We're not going to dance party here today, but we'll bring it back another day. As I was watching that story, I was thinking to myself, you know, each of us is a star keeper of the love and the kindness and the connection and the values of our living tradition of Unitarian Universalism, of our hearts. And one of the ways we tend to our stars is by sharing our lives with one another and then receiving those shares, receiving that connection so that we know we are carrying with each other all that life has for us, the good and the bad, the joys and the sorrows, the celebrations and the milestones. So we create a space in our service most weeks to be able to invite us into that space of receiving and carrying the joys and sorrows of this gathered community so that we forge deep bonds of community and connection. As we begin this time of sharing, of joys and sorrows, of holding our own joys and sorrows in our hearts, we invite our virtual community to share in the chat, and I have a few to share with all of you. Former member, longtime member who does not live here in Boise anymore, Susan Kelly, we would like to share that hold her in our hearts and prayers as she shares that her sister Sharon died this past week, surrounded by the love and light of her family. We keep them all in our thoughts and walk with them in grief. Annie Robertson shares that she is still learning how to walk again after several falls and going to physical therapy. And she writes this: I hate to keep asking, but it's good to ask, Annie, and I'm proud of you. But she could still use some help to walk her sweet dog a few times a day. She's hoping to be up and walking again very soon. Annie, we wish you all of the best in your healing and recovery and hope you get some dog walkers. And Diane Schwabe shares the fabulous news that her daughter-in-law, Heather, finally received a liver transplant this week. In a beautiful last-minute flight to Rochester to the Mayo Clinic, Heather has been waiting, the family has been waiting. It finally happened. It was a success, and everyone is relieved and elated, and we are delighted for you. And Sue Stadler shares her fabulous joy that she has learned that her lymphoma is in full remission. Congratulations, Sue. What a relief those words are to hear. What a relief. Sue shares her gratitude for all of the support and connection from the people here in this congregation. And she spent the last 5 months in an assisted living facility as she's undergone chemotherapy and is excited to be moving home. I bet you are. And we also celebrate together in this community the joy that Dennis Rockwood has had some improvement and is now off of hospice and receiving home health care, including physical therapy to improve mobility. Sharon and Dennis both thank this community for all of the messages of love, all of the meals, and the positive thoughts and prayers. If you are holding someone in your heart this morning, I invite you to speak their name aloud into this community of care that we might hold them with you. May the arms of this community hold all of our joys and sorrows, those named and those that remain silent and close to our hearts. May we feel the grace that surrounds us and be transformed by the spirit of life and love, with warmth to celebrate our joys and a gentleness to soothe our aching hearts. Let us breathe together. Breathe into the sacred space. Breathe with this beloved community filled with loving kindness. Breathe with wholeheartedness. Listen to what is calling you in the silence. Blessed be. Amen.
Our reading today is an excerpt from the proposed revision of Article 2 of our Unitarian Universalist Association bylaws from the Article 2 Study Commission.
As Unitarian Universalists, we covenant congregation to congregation and through our association to support and assist one another in our ministries. We draw from our heritages of freedom, reason, hope, and courage, building on the foundation of love. Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. Inseparable from one another, these values are
Interdependence. We honor the interdependent web of all existence. We covenant to cherish Earth and all beings, creating and nurturing relationships of care and respect. With humility, reverence, we acknowledge our place in the great web of life, and we work to repair harm and damaged relationship.
Pluralism. We celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. We covenant to learn from one another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect.
Justice. We work to be a diverse, multicultural community where all thrive. We covenant to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression. We support the use of inclusive democratic processes to make decisions.
Equity. We declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness. We covenant to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities.
Generosity. We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. We covenant to freely and compassionately share our faith, presence, and our resources. Our generosity connects us to one another. in a relationship of interdependence and mutuality.
Transformation. We adapt to the changing world. We covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritages, never complete and never perfect.
The purpose of the Unitarian Universalist Association is to actively engage its members in the transformation of the world through liberating love. May it be so.
Ooh, thank you both so much. That was beautiful. When I first began attending the Unitarian Universalist Church in Studio City, California, I knew very little about Unitarian Universalism. I knew they were welcoming because of all the rainbow flags and LGBTQ plus affirmations in the building. I knew they must be fairly liberal because they offered their space to a local pagan group, an AA group, and a Montessori preschool. And I got the sense that justice was important to them from the art and the quotes that hung around the fellowship hall and the kind of sharing the folks would do during joys and sorrows, usually lamenting some terrible injustice somewhere in the world. But it wasn't until I heard the principles and sources of our Unitarian Universalist tradition in a newcomer class that I really got it. At the time, there were only 7 principles, and as I heard and read along with each statement, I could feel something happening in my body, like my heart was expanding, and I felt filled with this sort of amazement and energy at the power and beauty and bold declaration and aspirational language of this religious community, so different from any other religious community I had ever been a part of. And what I heard was all of the values and commitments that I already held dear in my own life, the kind of commitments I was trying to make in my life and my work. It fit my worldview so perfectly. These sources of wisdom, the sources from which we gather our truth and meaning as we're on that ongoing search, they matched so many of the places that I was searching for wisdom and meaning in my own spiritual life. They included sources from my own family ancestry and from my own spiritual yearnings at that time. I didn't think any of this was possible in any religion, at least none that I had ever experienced. These words, these invitations, were why I fell in love with this faith. Here are the 7 principles again. I know there's a lot of text on these slides, but we're inviting you to just kind of let them seep into you rather than read them word for word. Most of you, many of you are familiar with the 7 principles. Some of you are new and maybe just discovering them. Maybe you read them on our website before you came here. They're a bit wordy, yes, but we'll leave them up here for a while. You can take your time. The handy thing about a list of principles like this is that it gave me a tool to talk about Unitarian Universalism with other people. I used them as a roadmap of sorts to talk about who we are and how we orient ourselves to the world and what we believe in. And as I began to learn more about this incredible progressive religion into which I had stumbled, particularly when I became a director of religious education at a nearby UU church, I found a deep appreciation for the story of how the principles and the sources of this tradition, of our tradition, came into being, and what that story said about our evolution, our becoming as Unitarian Universalists. You see, these 7 principles up here, in the language that you see on your screen, have only existed since 1985. At the time, they were a result of a major revision of our statement of purposes of our Unitarian Universalist Association. And that statement originally crafted when the 2 traditions, when Unitarianism and Universalism merged together in 1961. Here are those original statements of purpose from 1961. Just as you look at them, I just want to highlight the one there at the end, 1961, remember? To encourage cooperation with men of goodwill in every land. Has a very 1961 futuristic ring to it, doesn't it? So the 1985 revision was the process of a huge push, really a push that came out of the UU Women's Federation, post-second wave feminism, and a huge effort to bring more inclusive language into these purposes and principles. removing the sexist language and the patriarchal language from this 1961 original. And this process, this revision process, took more than 2 years and hours of involved conversation at congregational level and in our general assemblies, the gathering of Unitarian Universalists from across the country each summer. And the seventh principle, that beautiful affirmation for the care for our earth and our interconnected web of all existence, perhaps one of the more theologically crafted principles, was added from the floor of the General Assembly plenary session during the discussion just prior to the final vote. So the story behind our UU principles tells us so much about the historical foundations of this faith. More than just words that attempt to convey our values, commitments, and sources of inspiration and wisdom, this evolutionary story reminds us of some of the guiding truths of who we are. We have always been a non-creedal faith, a religion with no dogma, no singular theological truth, no creed or test of belief. And in each era in which we, as an association of congregations and ministers and communities and lay people, work to put our purpose for being into words, we've always included language that attempts to express that foundational identity in the best words we have at the time. In fact, our UU principles include this critical preamble. They start, we, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote, and then list the 7 principles. The words covenant, to affirm, and promote are active verbs, not statements of belief, reminding us that indeed these principles are statements of our values and commitment to action rather than belief. They are not and never were intended to become a UU creed, although sometimes we tend to use them that way. And when we are at our best, we've always understood that the language that expresses these ideals, language even at the time that was considered leading edge and contemporary and progressive, we know that language evolves over time. We change. Language changes. Leadership changes. Our world changes. Values get clarified. Change is the very nature of progressive movements in any era. We've seen it in how we understand and articulate justice issues, in social constructs like race and gender, in parenting and educational practices. So, of course, this evolution occurs in our faith communities too, with varying degrees of willingness and acceptance. If we're to live into the highest ideals of who we say we are, then we must be willing to change. It's why we call ourselves a living tradition, one whose identity grows and evolves over time, always aspiring toward the widest, most inclusive ideals of what is possible in religious community. The Reverend Louis B. Fisher, a Universalist minister and dean of the Universalist Seminary at St. Lawrence University, wrote these prophetic words in 1922. He wrote, "Universalists are often asked where they stand. The only true answer to give to this question is that we do not stand at all. We move. Or we are asked to state our position. Again, we can only answer that we are on the march. We do not stand still, nor do we defend any immovable positions, theologically speaking. We grow and we march, as all living things forever must do. The main questions with Universalists are not where we stand, but which way are we moving? Not which positions we defend, but which way are we marching? Those words still ring true today. And our UU principles were designed to be dynamic, to point the way in our marching toward our highest aspirations. Even those most involved in that revision effort and passage of the 1985 principles acknowledged then their limitations and the potential for their own obsolescence as this living tradition evolved and we further clarified who we were in our own becoming. And this congregation has done the same. In 2019, this fellowship joined in a grassroots evolutionary venture to add the 8th principle, which we adopted by congregational vote. This 8th principle project evolved from decades of still unfinished work in anti-racism, anti-oppression, and multiculturalism. Many Unitarian Universalists of color in our association felt that our efforts to dismantle systems and structures of racism and oppression were falling short, and we needed something to renew our commitment to that work, to hold ourselves accountable, and to express in theological terms that aspiration to fulfill the potential of our existing principles. And so the 8th principle was born. It reads, "We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote, journeying toward spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions." Hundreds of Unitarian Universalist congregations across the country have adopted the 8th principle as of today. And in that adoption process, congregations like ours are deepening their engagement with and commitment to anti-racism and anti-oppression work, broadening that learning, that dismantling in ourselves and our institutions. And this engagement has lit a fire within our association, driving our evolutionary momentum forward, and has led us to this current revision in its entirety of our principles, purposes, and sources with the UUA's Article 2 Study Commission. Our principles are housed in Article 2 of our Unitarian Universalist Association bylaws. So in order to change them on a national level, it requires a change to our association's bylaws. Now, many of you, having just been through our own bylaws revision process as a congregation, we know that this work can be sometimes challenging to ensure that everyone understands the process and can share feedback, and that changing the bylaws requires a much larger than usual vote of the membership. And the same is true for our UUA, only on a much larger scale. But despite the challenges and complications of a process that seeks to involve as many people as possible, we anticipated the need for changes, for a re-articulation of our faith and our own evolution in our growth. When the 1985 principles were passed, a provision was also passed to revisit those principles every 15 years. It was written into the bylaws, including the appointment of a commission if need be. And so here we are, only 38 years later. So after a year and a half of work, including surveys, videos, feedback sessions, and more, our Article 2 Study Commission has submitted its final report and recommendation to the UUA board. The reading that Patricia and I shared together is part of the revised language proposed in that report. Over the next year, our UUA board will continue hosting forums so that all people can learn more and talk about the proposal and offer amendments. So I encourage you to contribute to that process. It can be really meaningful, even if sometimes a little fraught with conflict. The final version of Article 2 will be presented for a final vote at the 2024 General Assembly. So it will be important to make sure we've got all of our delegates then. And it will take a 2/3 majority to be adopted as the new Article 2 of our UUA bylaws. And if it fails, according to our own bylaws, we will not be able to revisit it for 2 years. For being a living tradition, we seem to be awfully good at making change complicated for ourselves. And while all of these details are important to know so that we can all participate in the process of how we show up together as a national association and living out our commitment to the democratic process, this is about more than just revision of bylaws and governance. Because this entire process is about reimagining and rearticulating who we are and who we aspire to be for the next generation. And this new proposed language, as you heard, makes some beautiful theological claims, placing love, liberating love, in fact, at the center of our faith. And using love to describe our Unitarian Universalist theology isn't new for us. We've been using it for decades, even centuries. Universalists refer to it as God's love. These days, it feels more expansive for us for all the reasons to just say love with a capital L. Love is how I have always tried to describe my own theology and spiritual center. And love gets a bad rap sometimes. Many dismiss it as frivolous or saccharine, even juvenile. And many of us have experienced a love that has been shaken or broken, trampled or abandoned. And many have endured those same kinds of experiences from religions that also claimed love was at their center. So I get that it's tricky. But what other word best describes and holds space for the myriad theologies so wide and varied, covering the spectrum that include theist and atheist, pantheist, religious naturalist, pagan, Buddhist, Jew, and so on and so on. Love is big enough to hold all the many values and experiences of our shared faith: inherent worth, interdependence, reason and science, spiritual growth, beauty and transcendence. Love is big enough to hold harm and the grief, the mistakes and the miracles of a people who aspire to move closer and closer to wholeness, healing, transformation, and liberation for all. Love is both a belief and a practice. Love might be how we get to the promised land. I spent a lot of time reading and rereading the proposed revision of Article 2 in preparation for this service. The purposes, values, covenant, and freedom of belief. And each time I read it, I experienced those same feelings that welled up inside me when I first heard our current principles and sources shared with me. A kind of cracking open of my own spirit, that sense of falling in love with this faith yet again. And I'm glad for that, because in this falling apart world where injustice and pain and hate and division and dehumanization rears up again and again on a near constant basis, we need this love. I need this love. We need a love that holds us and fires us up, that guides us and reminds us of the best of who we are and who we can be. We need this beautiful, comforting, afflicting, powerful, fierce, liberating, living tradition love with a capital L. We all do. So it turns out love has got a lot to do with it, with us. Love just might be how we get to the promised land. May it always be so. Amen. I invite us all to come together in the spirit of prayer and meditation. Find a comfortable place for your body. Close your eyes if it feels comfortable for you. Spirit of life and love, holy mystery. May we hear the voices of the past, mingled with the voices of today, guiding us into the future, into our own becoming, with purpose and principle, toward liberation for all people, with love as our common calling. Let us hold that love at the center. May we continue to cherish the earth with humility and reverence, honoring our place in the interdependent web. Let us hold love at the center. May we celebrate all sacred beings, diverse in culture and theology, learning from one another, embracing difference in our search for truth and meaning. Let us hold love at the center. May we keep reaching out, reaching for belovedness, for diverse multicultural community, for the collective thriving of all people, where all voices are heard. As we commit to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression, let us hold love at the center. May we welcome transformation, seeking spiritual growth, adapting to our changing world, evolving in this living tradition, never complete, never perfect. Let us hold love at the center. May we cultivate a spirit of generosity, of gratitude and hope, freely and compassionately sharing our faith, our presence, our resources, centering connection and relationships of mutuality. Let us hold love at the center. May we always declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent worth and dignity. May we recommit to one another with our time, wisdom, and attention to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities. Let us hold love at the center. Let us keep love at the center, now and always. Amen.
Or come when the moon is mellow.
Come when the year's first blossom blows. Come when the summer gleams and glows. Come with the winter's drifting snows. And you are welcome, you're welcome. Come with the winter's drifting snows. And you are welcome. You are sweet, oh love, dear love. You are soft as the nesting dove. Come to my heart and bring it to rest. As the bird flies home to its welcome nest.
Wow. I have no words after that. I invite you to rise as you are able and join me in placing your hands over your heart for our closing blessing. The thread of who we are will always be with us. Let us follow it into the future, living out our values and purposes and principles, welcoming love, holding love at the center of this living tradition, and falling in love again with our shared faith. Blessed are we all. Go in peace.